I'm going through some of my branches and things like that to put into my Zen Habitats. So what I'm going to do is kind of lay these out. I wanted to show you these specific branches too. There's this guy that custom makes these out of PVC pipes, and he has all different lengths, and they look like wood, but they're very lightweight, which is really cool. And they're specifically made for green tree pythons. Many animals can enjoy these. So I'll link you guys to these below because I just think they're super cool. I ended up using twine and then putting a stick across to tie up my branches kind of where I wanted them, just so that I could get them at the angles that I wanted to have them at before I ended up spray foaming. So I kind of laid this all out, sat on it for a minute, just to kind of figure out, but honestly, like looking down into the enclosure, it made it very difficult to kind of like see it like finish. So I wish I could have had it sat upright, but anyways, I got it exactly how I wanted it. I went in with some scissors. You can use whatever, a screwdriver, to kind of score and mark up the back of my Zen Habitats just to make it a little more grippy for my spray foam to adhere to. Once I got all my branches exactly where I wanted them and kind of leaned them up or tied them with the twine, I just kind of like sat on that for a minute, made sure it's exactly what I wanted. And then I went in with my spray foam and I spray foamed the base of all of the branches where they touch the backgrounds and the sides. And I kind of had to do this in portions. Like I did the back first, and then I flipped it over on its side and adhered those branches. And the spray foam was a little intense in a lot of the areas, so I ended up going through later, which you'll see, and kind of cutting those. But I also made some little custom ledges for the enclosure, so I'm spray foaming those on as well. And this is a good time to kind of make any last minute changes you want before you spray foam if there's something that you want to move. So here's kind of like what I came up with. I also spray foamed in a little cup so that I could plant plants in there, and you can kind of see the little ledges that I made. And you can kind of see that there's a lot of foam around the wood, which we will be cutting off. Adding cork rounds to the background is actually one of my favorite things to do as well, so you'll see a few of those. Here I'm taking a razor. You can kind of use whatever tool works for you, but I'm just kind of cutting away a bit of the excess foam as it does expand. This one that I like to use expands up to 3 inches. I think they have one that expands to 1 inch. That could be good for some applications, but I really like to make sure that my wood is on there because this wood is actually pretty heavy, except those one branches that I showed you that are the PVC. Those things are really light, which is really cool. Next, I'm mixing up some dry lock with a little bit of acrylic paint to give it some color. I paint this on the backgrounds and I paint this on my spray foam because usually in order to get silicone or whatever to stick to it, you kind of have to cut the shiny parts of it off. So I ended up just in most of my enclosures just painting the dry lock over it because not only does it waterproof it, which you don't really need in a lot of applications, but it also colors it. So kind of killing two birds with one stone, if you will. And I'm painting this all around the background, and I did a little bit of green as well. And I also did this because a lot of times when you use oh my gosh, what am I trying to say? When you use your silicone to apply to your spray foam so that you can then attach moss to it or dirt or whatever it is that you're going to be using, it is kind of hard to get at all the crevices of the spray foam, and sometimes you see the color of the spray foam through, which is not always the most attractive. So that's one thing that painting helps avoid too. It just helps you to avoid any random little cream colored areas poking through. And it's just easier to work paint and dry lock into these areas than it is to work the silicone in there. I did end up using brown silicone for this as opposed to my normal clear silicone, just so I could see exactly where it was and wasn't. And again, so I really didn't have any of that cream colored spray foam coming through. All right, I have tilted this up like this so that I can work on this area here, and I'm going to be doing the same method that I'm doing right now with the entire background. So I'll spare you guys most of that, but just wanted to show you what I'm putting on there.
So I've got some brown silicone, and I'm going to be putting this on with gloves and applying it in all the nooks and crannies. And then I'm gonna be going in and using Eco Earth. This is pretty dry. I made the mistake of buying the block kind, and it is not dry and hasn't been dry. So I went to the store, bought this. We're gonna use this. And then I'm also gonna do some areas that are more moss-like. I think this will help with the humidity in there, and I've never done it before, so I thought I would give it a shot.
Here I'm putting on my brown silicone and kind of just rubbing it into the background. And if I don't get every single nook and cranny because I've painted it with the dry lock, you won't really notice and it'll just blend in. So I'm spreading this all over, and this does dry fairly quickly, especially depending on how humid or arid or hot it is in the climate that you are in. But I'm working in small areas because it does tend to dry out, and it was drying up on me pretty quickly. It was hotter than hell in the room that I'm in right now. So yeah, working quickly, and then putting the cocoa fiber on top of this along with some sphagnum moss. Obviously, whatever enclosure you're creating, you might want sand or you might want something else, but pretty much everything sticks to this. I also ended up putting a bit of foil on some of my wood because I was finding it very hard to avoid getting the silicone on it. But here's what I ended up with. I ended up also using and putting on some cork rounds and cork bark on the backgrounds as well, but I loved using the moss around the branches.
Here is the substrate I will be using. This is the awesome Reptichip, and this is the premium medium coconut chips, and you can kind of see the size here. They hold moisture super well. Here's their Instagram. I'll link them below as well, but you can get them on Amazon, I believe. So I'll link all that for you, but I use all of theirs in all of my enclosures. I'm gonna take a little bit of this from Josh's Frogs. This is ABG. It's this layer right here. It's just really good for like growing stuff in. So I'm gonna use it in this planter up here. I'm gonna go ahead and pre-soak my sphagnum moss so that it's nice and humid by the time we put it in here. So what I'm gonna do is just add water to this bag that's been treated with Reptisafe and let it sit.
Here I'm creating a drainage layer since this is going to be a fairly humid enclosure with a fogger. Usually I also put a screen on top of this so it doesn't mix with my substrate, but I didn't have any, so I just went for it and put my Reptichip right on top and spread it out. And I put a few little plants in the enclosure, as you'll see in a minute. And here is the final enclosure. It ended up looking so good. I was really happy with it. My plants are still kicking and alive, except for that yellow one that's hanging from the humid hide. That one died super fast, but the other plants are actually doing really well. So subscribe if you enjoyed watching, and we will see you guys in the next video.